How are you doing?
Dusty, I'm well. How are you?
Doing well. Happy Friday.
Indeed, Friday it is.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the session today.
I am too. I'm really excited. I'm really thankful that everybody's been like bearing with me. I got onboarded and we're waiting for someone to fill Gabby's old role. So
Yes,
we're excited about moving this forward. So we finally come to a place where I hope we're gaining more momentum. So
that, and
yeah,
I want to see what we're about to do and
yeah.
change and all things under the sun with the Y3
Yeah.
relations.
Yeah, this is my first time like really like doing any type of like org-wide presentations. I'm pretty nervous. I'm like worried I'm gonna screw something up with Zoom or
Listen,
yeah.
it's just you and whatever room you're in right now and a cup of water, you'll be just fine.
Yeah. So yeah.
All
So
right, well,
I'm excited. Well, yeah, so this is normally our learning lab space. So we normally have like Y1, Y2 folks in this space to
okay.
talk more about CRP stuff. But since it was an existing space, like where sometimes data solutions comes in to learn more
hmm
about what's going on with CRP, we just decided to use this existing space, invite Y3 folks into it so that Y1 and Y2 people can also get an understanding of what's happening with Y3 and just give everybody a chance to kind of like connect at the same time. So yeah.
I, I saw your email too that came out not long ago. So I'm guessing this would pretty much be your overview of the information, and then the second part will be opportunities to kind of connect and just ask some questions, I imagine.
Yeah, so we'll leave time. So basically like the first part, 45 minutes, we'll have time to like connect and ask questions. And so
Okay.
basically had been going through it and it was just going to be way too tight to try to cram everything into 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
we're doing an optional session where we'll dive deeper into some of the findings from the report I did, and then yeah, and then ask, leave time to ask questions about that part. But
Okay.
we'll be doing an overview, some like updates on the status of where we are, and then have time for everyone to ask questions before folks hop off, and then have that optional time for Y3 folks to dive in a little bit deeper.
You know we're going to have all the questions in the world.
And so I'm glad Kylie and Monica and Chad will be on the phone for those questions.
All right, well, cool. Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah, looks like she's in a cool place. I don't know what that is, but.
We'll give folks a few more minutes to hop on. But in the meantime, if anyone on the call wants to go ahead and change their display name to include, and if you click on, or actually let me drop the link for the presentation in the chat, and then there's instructions for how to change your display name. And see those, and if you wouldn't mind taking notes, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. So welcome, everybody. I know folks are still hopping on the call, but in case you just hopped on, if you wouldn't mind changing your display name to include your first name, the program year. I think somebody, could everybody mute, please? I'm not sure who's on that, but thank you. But if you wouldn't mind changing your display name and the session that you plan to attend, because the first 45 minutes we'll be discussing Y3 overview and updates, and then the second 45 minutes is a choose your own adventure. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And please forgive me, this is my first time doing an organization-wide Zoom call, so hopefully Zoom works for me. And it looks like we might already be recording. Let's see. And I can't see the chat, so Z, would you mind helping me monitor the chat as well, please? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we'll, I think we're recording, so we'll go ahead and get started. So if either in the chat or out loud, if we could have folks share, we'll start with our icebreaker. What do you hope to be true for fellows by the end of the Y3 program year?
Yeah, like I used to, yeah, I'd select before and then someone just, it's like automatic.
And folks can share out loud as well.
Hello? This is Ebony. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hey, team, everyone. So what I hope to be true by the end of Y3 year is that students are ending our program and leaving our program like completely connected to all the resources, systems, tools, people on their campus to help them thrive the rest of their 4-year, 3 to 4 or 5 years that they're at whatever university, if that's their pathway. And then if not, if their pathway is not a 2-year or 4-year, that they just leave Y3 with a solid plan as to what they want, you know, the next years of their life to be looking like. So if they are, so to sum it up, if they're at a university or a 2-year, 4-year, whatever that may be, that they are very well connected such that when they leave one goal as their support, they know all the supports that they have on campus to keep thriving. And then if that, you know, if their path is not a 2-year, 4-year, that whatever their highest post-secondary aspiration may be, that they are just clear on that and leaving one goal very clear on the next steps and who can support them and what they need.
Dusty, you have some responses in the chat if folks wanted to voice out. I guess the point of the chat is you didn't want to voice out. I can read it for you. Some people said, strong sense of vision, purpose, and power. Y3s feel empowered to proceed on their pathway toward completion. Echoing some of the things that other folks said, fellows understanding that their role at One Goal can play, supporting them throughout their post-secondary journey.
Great, thank you, Zanzaya. Would anybody else like to share out loud about what you hope to be true for fellows by the end of their Y3 program year?
I was typing that they are confident in their ability to continue their chosen pathway without the intentional support from their Y3 program director.
Thank you. Can we get one more person to share out what you hope to be true for fellows? And even if you don't work with directly with Y3 fellows, we'd love to hear from you as well.
I think for me, it is that they have the momentum they need to get to and through to the completion or graduation, and are set up to lead the lives that they want to lead.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, guys. And so keeping this in mind, we'll also be sharing with you voices of fellows, of PDs, of you guys, of staff members, and what they hope to be true for fellows, and how that guides us in how we move forward with Y3 program transformation. So just to give you an idea of what we're in for today, we'll provide an overview of Y3 program transformation, the listening tour that I conducted in late Q1 and early Q2, including the key takeaways and the recommendations there. We'll also talk about where we are now and what we're thinking in terms of reframing our approach to Y3 program transformation. And then we'll have time to connect and collaborate on our next steps. And then so this steps 1 through 4 in the agenda is what will take place in the first 45 minutes. And then we've added in an optional time because we just have a ton of information to cover. And the Y3 report, which is attached to the calendar invite for the Y3 folks who received it. And then it's also in this slide deck, linked in the slide deck as well. We encourage you to read it. It is long, but I think it's interesting because there are actual direct quotes from fellows, from PDs, from staff members around their thoughts around Y3. So, on your own time when you feel free to read the report and then reach out if you have any questions about it. But the second 45 minutes of today will be Choose Your Own Adventure. And this is normally our curriculum and coaching lab curriculum and coaching learning lab. It's a space where we talk about CRP, and we have all different roles join, but typically we have a lot of Y1 and Y2 present. So we're excited to welcome our Y3 friends on the call. So the second 45 minutes of the call, we'll be going over Y2 Zone 5 feedback. This is a choose your own adventure. So you'll just choose one of these 3 options. Y3 friends are welcome to hop off the call at 2:45 Central Time, or you can feel free to join one of these sessions where we'll do a Y3 deep dive, where we'll dig in further into some of the input that we got from our stakeholders. And we'll be using a separate Zoom link for that because we'll be doing breakout groups within that that Y3 space.
Jesse, can I jump in real quick? I just wanted to do a quick share out. I know that some of y'all might have seen in the chatter or in our agenda topics that we originally were going to have a conversation around grit. And as we were planning out the agenda and giving it structure, we realized that the grit conversation is probably a really important one, but also would take a lot more time, and I know that there's a lot of interest in that. And so we've pushed it back to a later time. So just wanted to acknowledge that this might be a shift for some of you all, especially if you were looking forward to being in that breakout room, but we want to make sure that we're giving it the time and space it needs. So just FYI, I wanted to share that additional context.
Thanks, Maria. So our goals for the Y3 portion of this meeting is to make meaning of the key takeaways and the recommendations that were made in the Y3 program transformation report based off of the listening tour, as well as some other key inputs as well. And as I mentioned before, we'll be in the first half of this call, we'll do it in overview form. In the second half of the call, we'll be diving in deeper. And then share where we are right now, just status updates with the Y3 program transformation process. And then speak more about, connecting and collaborating, and speaking more about what comes next in that process. So I've had the chance to meet almost everybody on this call in person, fortunately, and I started here at One Goal in July, and so my role involves qualitative research and learning around Y1 and Y2 CRP, as well as supporting with qualitative research for the Y3 program transformation. And then I will also be working with our soon-to-come Senior Director of Partnerships Development and Support. So this is a re-envisioned role that Gabi previously filled. And so that person will be supporting with the Y3 program transformation process, and we'll be figuring out some of the more nuanced details of this person's role in the coming weeks. So we'll start digging in. So just, you know, we have a lot of different roles and regions represented on the call. So, you know, our Y3 folks know best how different Y3 is than the high school experience that our Y1 and Y2 fellows are in. So while in Y1 and Y2, thinking about CRP overhaul, curriculum and coaching were the levers towards greatest change there. And so understanding that Y3 offers so many different complexities with students no longer being all under the same roof and just, you know, all different pathways that students are following, you know, we had to approach Y3 a little bit differently, the way that Y1 and Y2 were overhauled. So some of the inputs that had influenced the Y3 program transformation report were, you know, I reviewed regional and national artifacts. Some were left for me by Gabi, by Kylie. You know, a lot of you, the Y3 folks on the call, connected me to different artifacts, whether it was coaching guides or, you know, other materials that they used. Also conducted external research, which helped inform some of the recommendations in the report, and then conducted a national listening tour where I spoke with folks from all 6 regions, understanding that Bay Area doesn't yet have Y3, but also wanting their early input on, you know, on any ideas that they had. But, you know, really engaged with staff members in all different regions, as well as PDs and fellows, and just want to say a huge thank you to the staff members on the call who connected me directly with PDs and fellows. Was able to meet with, you know, them both in person and speak with them over the phone, and, you know, just gain some really helpful insight on their thoughts about what was working well, what wasn't working well, and opportunities for moving forward with Y3 program redesign. So the goals of Y3 program transformation are grounded in our logic model, and it's really thinking about how can we improve fellow outcomes? How do we improve persistence and completion? And then also aligning the Y3 program with what we've done in Y1 and Y2 in terms of integrating a culturally relevant pedagogical approach. And then we have our pillars of fellow success, which, you know, there is a column with Y3 outcomes there, and that's what we're helping, you know, our Y3 fellows to achieve is growth along in those non-cognitive skills on the pillars of fellow success. So I'll stop there. Do we have any questions before we move into some of the key takeaways from the report? Okay. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat, but otherwise we'll go ahead and start taking a look at the key takeaways from the report. So keeping in mind, the report was more of a listening tour and not a formal study. So you know, we wanted to get early input from the people doing the work, from the fellows we serve, to understand more about the Y3 program and where the direction that we can take it moving forward. So one of our first key takeaways will not be a surprise to any of you, that relationships matter, consistent communication matters. But again, I encourage you to read the report because there are subheadings under each of these key takeaways that offer more nuance to what fellows are experiencing, as well as our teachers and our staff members. So just thinking about key takeaway 1, some of the things that came up around relationships and consistent communication were that fellows appreciate consistent support regardless of who that comes from. So regardless of whether it's coming from a PD or a one goal staff member, fellows were saying that, you know, like what helps them the most is that they have somebody to turn to. We also heard from both fellows and PDs. We heard from like PDs and staff members working directly with fellows that it's really frustrating when you're texting a fellow, you're calling them, you're emailing them, and they're not responding. But at the same time, the adults working with the fellows understand that it's important that they know that somebody is out there checking in on them. And on the flip side, you know, we had fellows respond that said, you know, even though we don't respond, it's really nice to know that somebody cares about us. And so, you know, that was one of the interesting like subheaders under that takeaway around strong relationships and consistent communication. And then we had another theme that came out where, you know, some of our male PDs and staff members don't feel comfortable reaching out to fellows who may be 18-year-old girls, or they may feel like their parents may, don't want this person communicating with them. And so some of those are like the nuanced pieces that have come out in the report, where we have included some of those direct fellow quotes as well. So could I have a volunteer read key takeaway number 2, please?
Stakeholders believe the One Goal program should be centered on fellow voice and choice in determining their own post-secondary path, with clear and aligned messaging for school leaders, teachers, students, and One Goal staff. With an organizational shift towards a culturally relevant pedagogical approach to a program that will integrate progressive pathways, staff members, and PDs believe that One Goal will be better positioned to provide a unique benefit to fellows in the development of purpose and value. Woo! PDs and staff members have stated that they are hopeful that One Goal will be able to reach a broader audience of students by providing expanded post-secondary options, while also maintaining reservations about One Goal's ability to effectively implement a comprehensive progressive pathways program, given the large scope of non-college pathways that exist.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, so again, this aligns with our direction moving towards CRP, is that the One Goal's historical emphasis on college only came up from PDs and staff members. And so, yeah, so really just thinking about, like the direction that we're moving with progressive pathways, we're getting positive feedback both from staff and PDs, but there's also a sense of hesitation. It's like, are we taking on too much? Because progressive pathways are so individualized. We heard that from teachers as well. And so definitely something for us to take a close look at as we build out progressive pathways, and in doing that in a way that's manageable in scope, while also listening to fellow voice, especially fellows who aren't interested in a 2 or 4 year college pathway. And then another one of the subheaders that came out from that is thinking about, like, how do we do this in a way where fellows are given a choice and they're they're not pushed into progressive pathways because it's easier, or because it's the messaging around it is that it's because you're not likely to go to college. Making sure that we're the way we're messaging and framing progressive pathways is like a choice that that fellows make, and not something that's pushed onto them. But on the flip side, understanding that not every fellow aspires to go to a 2 or 4 year college. Would somebody please voice over key takeaway number 3, please?
PD disengagement in Y3 has impacted all regions, requiring One Goal staff members to dedicate significant capacity to supporting fellows without a Y3 PD. Stakeholders have experienced the current Y3 program model to be most successful in impacting persistence outcomes when the PD remains highly engaged.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, so so this again is no surprise to you, because these key takeaways came from things that staff told me, that as well as fellows and PDs. But fellows also commented on how they've been impacted by PD disengagement. We had a student at a 4-year university that told me, I had 4 different PDs, between his junior year of high school and where he is now, and how he feels like, he would have learned more about what to expect in college had he had a consistent person. And then, there was also just like, there's no surprise here where, where some of a lot of this may trace back to, like, whether a PD was volunteered or voluntold. That came up from staff, that came up from speaking with a voluntold, with voluntold PDs as well, around, like just how overwhelmed they feel about, about their workload. And so again, in the report, there's some direct quotes there that speak more to this takeaway. Could somebody read over takeaway 4, please?
Stakeholders reported the One Goal program provides excellent support with FAFSA completion, scholarship applications, and supplying emergency funds for post-secondary expenses. However, program directors and staff members indicated that financial constraints continue to act as the primary barrier to persistence and completion for enrolled fellows.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, so there were no complaints at all out of anybody that I spoke to around preparing students to do FAFSA or scholarship applications or anything like that. Yet one of the biggest barriers to persistence, named by fellows, PDs, and staff members, fellows in terms of their worries about being able to stay in school, was money. So that came up quite a bit, and so that and it wasn't anything about how One Goals program is operating in terms of support with FAFSA and scholarships, but it has more to do with just one of the realities that fellows are facing. Could somebody read over key takeaway number 5, please?
Responses from stakeholder engagements encompass themes of social emotional support, specifically social belonging and purpose/value, and college knowledge as key areas aligned with the pillars of fellow success, where the One Goal program is best positioned to add value to fellows' Y3 experience.
Yeah, so this was interesting that some of this came out, and it aligns very well with with our pillars and trying to understand where is One Goal making a difference in the lives of these fellows as it relates to growth along the pillars of fellow success. So this is something that's worth digging more into to understand how we're influencing growth along those pillars related to the Y3 outcomes. And then the last takeaway is kind of a multi-part takeaway. Could I get one last volunteer to read over key takeaway number 6, please?
Depending on regional maturation, One Goal staff members' beliefs varied on the importance of the program director as the most important lever in the Y3 program for impacting fellow experience. Regardless of beliefs about PDs as the key lever to focus on for Y3 transformation, all regions are committed to investing in stronger post-secondary partnerships. PDs and One Goal staff members believe on-campus supports for enrolled fellows would have greater influence on Y3 persistence outcomes. In addition to strengthening post-secondary partnerships with 2-year, 4-year, and credential granting programs and institutions, PDs and staff members believe that career and workforce development opportunities are necessary for all fellows, especially for engaging those who are unenrolled.
Thank you. Yeah, so given that Chicago and Houston are some of our older regions, that have had a few years of Y3 so far, some of their responses varied from other younger regions in terms of is the PD the key lever in Y3? And so some of the younger regions are like, we don't know yet. It's too early to say. But from some of our more experienced regions that have been around, that have had more experience with Y3 and have been around longer, there was hesitation around whether or not that the key lever was in fact the PD. And there are some different pilots going on in regions about what would it look like to have a proximate champion? What will it look like to have somebody on campus supporting fellows? And whether that's, fellow support staff members that have taken the place of a disengaged PD or, a DTS on a campus, there's just a lot of innovative thinking around what that looks like to support fellows where there already are. And in the report, we talk more about what it might look like, what this might look like in terms of recommendations to put people on campus, to support fellows both on campuses where there's clusters, large clusters of fellows, as well as what would this look like on campuses where there might only be one fellow, or how do we support unenrolled fellows by having a proximate champion? So we'll get to more of that thinking in just a minute. So, and then again, another thing that was brought up outside of 2 or 4 year institutions, outside of credential granting programs, we had a lot of PDs and staff members talk about workforce development opportunities and job coaching for students as well, and whether that makes sense to include, or provide support there. So that was something that came up as well. So before we move on to some of the recommendations that came from these key takeaways, does anyone have any questions or anything to add from any of the key takeaways that we just discussed?
Dusty, just to update you on the chat, it wasn't necessarily any questions or anything, but just a lot of comments on appreciating all the work that you've done in the short amount of time that you've been here, putting together an amazing 35-page report, etc. So there's a lot of comments about you being incredible, and helpful.
Thank you guys, I appreciate it. And thanks for bearing me as I fumble through this presentation. This is my first presentation. I have a ways to go with public speaking, so I'm figuring it out, but thank you, I appreciate the love.
Yes, there were 6 comments that said you were doing a terrible job presenting. 6 comments.
Do not listen to Canada chat.
All right, so if there's no questions about any of the key takeaways, we'll talk about some of the program level recommendations, and they basically fall into 2 big umbrella categories. The first recommendation was we need the expertise of regions to move forward with what we actually do with this information. And so my first recommendation was to convene a working group comprised of Y3 folks related to Y3, whether that's core model, direct service, direct support, full release, and as well as post-secondary partnerships, making sure that we're aligning on what Y3 redesign looks like, using the information we have from the key takeaways. And then the second recommendation I have was really focusing more on this idea around network of champions. It's how can we position fellows to to be successful in terms of persistence, in terms of completion, as well as growth along the pillars of fellow success. These areas where research shows this is what a student needs in order to achieve success in life. So how can we better support fellows with that by activating a network of champions, knowing that we can't do all the things, for all of our fellows, as they transition onto university campuses or to their post-secondary pathways. How do we leverage partnerships to do that? And so here, this will transition us into reframing our approach. So we had originally looked at a program lever, moving into the program lever. And the program lever I recommended in my report was post-secondary partnerships. While we got feedback from, while we got feedback around these are things that we can do with the curriculum, the feedback around the Y3 curriculum was generally pretty positive. And for our folks that don't work in Y3, the curriculum is not traditional lesson plans the way they are in Y1 and Y2. It's we have our steps to success, which is which basically helps guide our PDs in what fellows need to be doing in their first year of college, as well as coaching guides. The Chicago coaching guides were definitely mentioned by multiple other regions as an exemplar for for what a successful Y3 curriculum looks like and how to implement it. But curriculum wasn't a big area of concern coming out from the PDs and staff members that are working in Y3. And then there were recommendations for technology around how to streamline some of this data in GradTrack, and around how it would be nice to have a database for progressive pathways. Yet that wasn't the theme that kept coming up again and again. And then coaching with high levels of PD disengagement. A lot of the feedback that we got is that DTSs aren't actually coaching in the same way that coaching happens in Y1 and Y2. And so that wasn't once again coaching was not the key area of focus that came out from the voices of the stakeholders in the listening tour. And so the report includes some of the input around each of those other program levers, but it makes recommendations around those, but that's not the key recommendation. Was post-secondary partnerships. While some of the some of the solutions that we're thinking about for some of the problems that surfaced, from fellow voices and PDs and staff. We're thinking about reframing our approach. Instead of solely focusing on post-secondary partnerships, anchoring our approach to Y3 redesign and centering it on the fellow experience instead of like doing a full-scale overhaul of post-secondary partnerships work. So this is a recent pivot in our thinking, and it was really trying to ground in like what are the problems, what are the barriers to persistence and completion for fellows, and based off of the information from the report that I gathered through the listening tour, like the 3 key challenges are lack of a proximate champion, financial constraints, as we mentioned, not around like filling out the FAFSA, but once you're in college, like money to ensure that you're able to persist, as well as thinking about that for other post-secondary pathways as well. And then like just limits of One Goal's historical college only focus. So these were like the three barriers that surfaced from the feedback that we got. So thinking about these challenges, we're like, okay, so where can we focus? Like where can we focus our efforts in addressing Y3 redesign? I'm also going to stop there and let Monica or Kylie chime in if you guys have anything to add.
I can add a little bit of something. I think in the background of the work that Dusty has been taking us through, you guys may know that as I entered into the CPO role about a month and a half ago, I started doing a listening tour. And that listening tour was anchored on a couple of questions, one of which is, where are we on the path to 60%, and what should we do moving forward? And I am still deep in that listening tour, but one of the things that is coming out for me and prompting a push to really focus on the fellow experience is making sure that we are getting really, really tight and focused on exactly what part of the fellow experience we want to improve or layer onto or create, and being open and flexible about how we do it as long as we solve the problem for our fellows. So kind of really making sure that our orientation is on the exact aspect of the fellow experience that we want to improve, because we think that will lead to completion, better completion for them, versus getting anchored onto a particular approach or a particular solution that may end up being the right one, but let's not anchor on the solution. Let's actually anchor on the fellow experience as our true North Star. So that realization of making sure that we're anchoring on the fellow experience as our North Star, I think led us to kind of reframe the approach to Y3 transformation, to make sure that it's similarly anchored on the fellow experience versus a particular lever that we really want to focus on. Happy to answer more questions, but that's kind of the additional layer and context that I give in addition to what Dusty talked about.
So this is also coming from lessons learned around, the CRP overhaul in Y1 and Y2. So, and here we're trying to start small, before rolling out a full overhaul of post-secondary partnerships. So here, in terms of thinking about honing in on one aspect, like one potential solution, and like what can we do here to learn more before we begin to make system-wide changes. So the way that my current thinking is leaning, based off of the qualitative data that we received from our stakeholders, is looking at this lack of approximate champion. We know that some regions are already beginning to look at putting approximate champion, putting, whether it's a One Goal staff member or a One Goal alum on campus to support our Y3 fellows. So this is a way we're leaning, but would love to also get input from each of you, and learn more about like what can we change about the fellow experience that we think will increase persistence and completion rates. We have solutions that were named in the phone calls and the in-person interviews that I did with stakeholders, and so part of my job will be going back through that and looking through that and bringing that to the table and discussing like this is what folks have been saying, like how can we determine like the what and the how of small scale testing to figure out what might work in terms of these solutions that folks are proposing. And then would also love to know your thoughts. I would love to have you voice over here like anything that you're already trying in your region that connects fellows with approximate champion, or perhaps one of the other challenges that was named around financial constraints or lack of non-college pathways. And then just other ideas that you have for opportunities that exist that allow us to start small to figure out what solutions might work best before implementing system-wide change. So we'd love to pause there and have anybody on the call answer any of these questions around what's already happening in your region, or other ideas that you might have for opportunities that exist. And this is, go ahead.
And I was going to say, Craig is on the call, but I definitely want to shout him out for the work that he's done in the post-secondary partnership space regarding smart matching. In New York, we're really lucky to have a robust urban CUNY system. And there they have tons of support programs that provide transit cards, financial aid gap assistance, coaching and support from a counselor. A lot of his work, and our work rather, is geared towards getting the students in those programs and in those seats. That's been a huge lever for success for us here in New York. So shout out to him.
Thank you. This is also something where we'll be following up with each of you, each region to understand more about what's currently happening in terms of some of those, addressing some of those 3 problems that we named, as well as just continuing to get your input. So thank you for sharing that, Terrell. But so just thinking about like Y3 transformation.
Hey,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So just a quick question. Curious if any regions have leveraged faculty in supporting fellows.
That's a great question. I'll leave that open for any of our regional Y3 folks to answer.
In New York, we've had a little trouble. We have willing faculty as long as FERPAs are signed, and FERPAs continue to be a barrier, primarily in terms of like using what capital we have with establishing relationships with fellows, and asking them to sign something while we're trying to build a personal relationship with them and provide them with holistic support has been a difficult trade-off, and we've sort of opted for the holistic support rather than the legal document. But there are faculty members who would love financial support, as long as, particularly the public institutions in the CUNY and SUNY space. Some private schools are a little more lax in that regard.
Thank you, Craig.
And to the point about private schools being a bit more relaxed, in one of our private school relationships here in New York, I have had the opportunity to engage directly with faculty members around certain student supports. It hasn't been extremely widespread. There's been a few instances though where I've worked with some of the mentors of the students who I am working with on the Y3 side. At one of our partner colleges that is a private school, the director of admissions has been very open with us, and he has in turn directed and connected me with some of those officials, and we have collaborated to try to provide support to a few of our students who are on the bubble this quarter with passing and failing.
This is Dominique from Chicago. So we've seen some success with faculty being tied in, but it is usually at our partnerships where we already have a really strong stakeholder spine, and they've been able to invest other folks because they truly understand what One Goal Fellows need. So an example of that is at Dominican. We had someone who used to work at North Park, which was one of our oldest partners, who transitioned to Dominican, and as a result was really able to lead the team because of his awareness of what One Goal has the impact to do, and what, yes, Barrington. And the result of that is there is a cohort model that a faculty member is teaching right now that One Goal Fellows are a part of. And what we hope to do is take some of the data from the impact of this cohort model and use it to compel other partners to mirror this experience for One Goal Fellows. And so how do we create community? How do we leverage the intimate relationships and the knowledge that faculty have in order to support the persistence of One Goal Fellows? The other way that it is happening indirectly is if fellows are getting scholarships that are connected to some sort of additional support, there's usually some sort of faculty advisor that is connected to that community. And so Robert Morris is an example of that, where there is a subset of students that One Goal makes up probably about 90% of the scholarship recipients, and the advisor for that scholarship program is looped into the updates that we'll get about how students are doing. And so those are two ways that faculty are involved that we're trying to increase across all of our partnerships.
Love it. Thank you, Dominique and Rich and Craig for sharing what's happening in each of your regions. So I know that we're at 1:46 Denver time, 2:46 Central time. So I wanted to quickly just leave this slide up here to let you know what's coming next, and name that we are, some of our early thinking for what this might look like is going back to fellows and saying like what, we're leaning towards proximate champion, but also want to bring in ideas from regions as well. But just want to really elevate fellow voice and go back to fellows and ask them, like, if we were to put a One Goal alum on campus, or a One Goal staff member, or a college advisor, or faculty member, out of those folks, who would you be most likely to engage with? Who do you think would you would like to engage with for support? Starting from there, and then identifying viable solutions that we can start to look at, and then also looking at what's already happening in regions and not reinventing the wheel. I know that in Chicago, you guys are already putting someone on a some of the city college campuses where fellows already are. So thinking about what's already happening and figuring out the how, figuring out like what solutions are we going to test, how are we going to test these ideas, and then also defining measures for success. How will we know if these pilots have been successful, and how will we know when they're ready to roll out system-wide? And then, like I mentioned before, like really making sure that our regions are engaged in this process, and that we can learn from what's happening in regions, and establishing a collaboration structure in order to figure out how this work is going. And then in FY21, looking forward, continuing to conduct those small tests of proposed solutions, And then, from my understanding, it was like at the very earliest, we would roll something out system-wide in spring of 2021, but that could be later, just depending on how this work ends up unfolding. So before we go to, breakout rooms, want to, leave. I don't know if we have time. Maria, do we have time for any questions?
Maybe we can take questions from folks that are not going to go into the Y3 deep dive space. And then if you're going to go in the Y3 deep dive space, maybe hold off and you guys can continue the conversation there. Does that sound okay? Also, Dusty, let me know when you want me to do the poll for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess we can take one or two questions here. I encourage you, if you're able to, join the optional deep dive space, and then otherwise feel free to email me questions, and if I can't answer them, I will try to direct them to someone who might be able to answer them. And if there's no questions, then we can go ahead and do the poll, and just also want to name that there's some resources here as well, for including a link to the full report. And then for folks that are staying on for the Y3 deep dive call, I'm going to post a link in the chat. We're going to hop on a separate Zoom link. And then if there's no other questions, I guess we can go ahead and move towards breakout rooms. And Y3 will hop on the separate link.
Yeah, we still have about 4 people who have not responded to the poll. If you can just do that quickly for us, and then Y3 folks, feel free to jump off this line and go to the new Zoom line, and then I will start moving us into coaching and or zone feedback. Thanks, team.
All right, thank you guys, everybody, for engaging in the Y3 section of this, and I'm going to hop off now and hop into the other Y3 Zoom room.
Thanks, Dusty. You
Thanks,
did awesome.
Dusty. That was wonderful.
Hey, team. Okay, I'm going to start breaking us up. Are there, Rachel, I don't know if you've taken a look as to how many folks are joining your breakout group.
It looks like Zach, but Zach, do you want to go to the curriculum feedback call? It's really up to you. I am happy for you to do one-on-one time, but I don't believe there's anyone else.
Wait, so what's the other option?
You can kick it with me one-on-one to go over coaching, or
you could join the Y3 group as well. Or the rest of us looks like we're going to be doing feedback for Y2 Zone 5, which I'm not sure how relevant that is, but you can sit in and hear how those conversations go.
Okay, can I do my own thing?
Or you could not be.
Oh yeah, you could just
off. The other option was not. I forgot. I will think about, Sarah, I saw your response, and Zach, I can think about doing what I was gonna do today on the NPT CRP Village on Monday. So okay. I can make some adjustments to that.
Cool, yeah, and coaching isn't like a super big part of what I do, so that's why it's not no offense to you personally.
First of all, if you know me, I am not offended one bit. So I was like, I bet no one's gonna come. It's okay. I'm not offended. This is also still recording, so I feel like people are gonna be dying laughing when they see this part. But
yeah. No, I also same same to you. You're welcome to stay with us for the review, the zone feedback. Oh my goodness. Or yeah, determine like what you want to do.
I think I would join coaching if that's still an option.
It can be still an option, yeah.
Okay. So let me break you all two into that group.
Enjoy your date, just the two of you.
Zach, you can join too. I'm kidding. You can have the rest of it. Wonderful day.
Zach, are you jumping off then?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off.
Bye. Okay. Thanks for joining. And Rachel, do you want to do, what time is it? Like 30 minutes? 35 minutes? I can't hear you because you're
Are
on
we
mute.
coming back?
We don't have to. I have the survey, but it's just one person. So I'll do it for 40 minutes. Or 35 actually, because that's right at the time. Okay, cool. Open room. Okay. You all should be getting a notification now. Hi, team. How are you?
Hi, Maria. Hi. What is the
Hi.
sunshiny space that you're in right now? So nice.
So there's this coffee shop called Doshi House. I haven't been here in a long time, but they, for a long time, were working to like remodel it. It's in the 3rd Ward in Houston, locally owned, and it's also a vegan spot. And so they finally like redid it. I don't think they were able to raise the funds they were hoping to because they were switching to a different space, but they've done this beautiful outdoor space now. And redone the inside, so it's like not super fancy. It still feels like Doshi House, but just really nice.
Can you please demo? I've spent so many hours of my life there. I'd love to see the upgrades to this outdoor space.
Yeah. How do I? Oh, okay. I'm like, how do I make it turn? I can't. So this is like the outdoor space.
Whoa! It's a janky bench in a parking lot that has like craters that are.
I know. Yeah, the
there's-
parking lot is so much better now. There's like spots that actually are okay for our cars to go in.
Wait, what
the
state
inside
are
is
you
in? I'm in Houston.
You're in Houston. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, is it not freezing and terrible and rainy where you are?
It is not.
That's amazing. I'm very jealous.
It was actually, I have this jacket. It's a little bit better, but when I first came out here, it was like hot, and I was like, why do you put on this little jean jacket? It was like, yeah. But the sun's not out anymore, or as much, and so I can be in my little jean jacket.
Oh, man.
How's everyone doing?
It has been a long week. I cannot believe it's only Friday. It feels like it's the 5th Friday that has happened this week. Like, I don't know how that's possible, but like Chica and I were saying on Wednesday, we were convinced it was Saturday, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't.
Oh. Yeah. But next week is a holiday, so that's good, maybe. And we could make it till then.
And Lydia's about to have her baby.
I know.
Oh gosh, tell her to come, y'all. She is breaking me down.
Lydia, when is like your due date, if you don't mind sharing?
December 4th, 1 week and a half.
Yeah.
And 26
like
minutes
now.
and 3 seconds. No, just
Oh, okay. Yep. It's time.
It is time.
we can't hear you.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. I was like, I got a back brace
Okay.
on and ice packs and all the things trying to just survive still. But I'm grateful. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Aw.
Expect pictures soon.
Yes, please. I was just telling Sarah I need baby pictures. That goes for everybody else too. I love baby pictures. It's okay. Cool. So I don't want to spend too much time. If we can get off early, that'd be awesome. Although I don't think we will. But thank you all for engaging in like a slightly different feedback cycle this time. What I quickly found out is when I was going back and taking all the inputs that we had for our vision setting call, I thought it would actually be really helpful to just get your input one more time before we start drafting. So it was different than what we've done in the past, but I think also combining Zone 5 and Zone 6 gives us a little bit more leeway to be able to do this. So we will also have an opportunity for you to give feedback once we draft the lessons, as we normally do. I'll put that in your calendars now. It'll be sometime in January. But wanted to still host this time because it's incredibly helpful to make sure that we're headed in the right direction at this point before we start drafting. There's just a lot that we wanted to make sure was true for our fellows at the end of the school year. And so, yeah, just a ton. So I did have an opportunity to go in and look at some of your comments, which were all great and made me happy to see like some of your ideas and suggestions. Wanted to give you all an opportunity, as always, to voice over any like big takeaways that you had at this point in time before we like dive into the actual lesson planning drafting.
Would want to first start out with a props for getting that down to 16 lessons. That was magic.
Yeah, I think just like really admire and appreciate you for taking our feedback last time around, like 5 and 6 feeling like too much and bringing them together. And it feels like you really just, I feel so heard and like you're so great at synthesizing all the feedback and putting it here together. I feel like you clearly laid out the priorities that we talked about last time. And so like to Rachel's point, somehow made it a relatively short zone, even though you were combining 2 things. So really just excited about this zone. It feels really purposeful and clear. So well done.
Thank you. One question I had, and this is more like a request, if there are like updated enrollment checklists that y'all are using that feel like really different than like the National Archive version, would love to take a look at them as I'm like rethinking how to incorporate some of the reflection pieces and break it out a little bit differently for the zone. We'd love to have like the most up-to-date thinking from regions and how, you know, what y'all have created or how y'all have modified that. That would be really helpful. Is there anything else that y'all wanted to like chat about? I know, I think the comment that I think you shared, making something more explicit or like a particular lesson around the Y3 stuff. And I also saw a suggestion of like maybe making one of the things one day instead of 2. Just trying to think through like was there anything that felt like, okay, this could be a little bit shorter to give us time to do something else? I can definitely think through that on my own, but if there are other ideas out there, that would be helpful too.
Yeah, I think my thinking was, and I think maybe like mine is more towards the end order, which like I know you have like the gift lesson, something like that. I just think like more time having norms and expectations, and this also kind of plays off of what Dusty was sharing around like what is Y3 and what can I expect, and like I think defining norms for like as a PD calling you, like here's when I will call and when I will not, because like my kids would give me shit because they'd be like, Miss, you're only calling me in like the middle of the afternoon and I'm sleeping or I'm in class, and I was like, I'm not gonna call you at 9 p.m. when that's like good for you. And so like some norm and expectation setting I think could be really helpful. I think the thing that maybe is not deprioritizing but could be just done differently is like what I was saying about the different tracks. So like when you're thinking about expenses and like loans and stuff like that, like having maybe a lesson where it's like a menu of options, like do this with the kids who are taking out loans, do this with the kids who don't have to take out loans but are living at home and need to think about those expenses.
so that they don't have to do separate lessons. They can be like one lesson with 3 different groups of students kind of situation. If that makes any sense.
That does. Thank you.
I don't know that I might have missed this at some point, but I think Rachel's point about both the fellow survey for spring and then also like getting contact information updated feel like important call outs to think about, like when should we make sure we know how One Goal can support and reach out to fellows, and then when is the fellow survey geared more towards, and I know that's movable for different regions, but would we in theory want this in the final zone? Would we in theory want to do that earlier? What will that look like was something I was thinking about, integration of forms.
Yeah, that's great. So I need to double check, but I'm almost like 95% sure that in the pacing calendar, I'm not it's a day that I didn't count for this. So there should be like a time for it in the like suggested pacing calendar, which is great because it doesn't mean we need to take anything out of this zone. But there was a good call out to, I don't remember, to Rachel, someone mentioned around like what it might look like or how to make it like a connection. Now it's been like a year since they've taken it or whatever. And so I think that there's an opportunity for me to connect with Suzanne on that lesson to make sure that we're updating it and making it relevant for fellows during that time. So that was a great call. The contact info, I had a question around that. So I have been thinking about that. Had 2 wonderings. One is that something that we already collect like grad tracky type way, like a form kind of way? And is that the way we want to continue to do it? Yes. Okay. And then the other piece is, I know that contact info for fellows change a ton. And so I'm wondering, so I think I had originally thought like, we'll do this at the beginning. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity. I mean, it's only 6 weeks, so maybe it won't change in that amount of time. But I don't know, there was just something about me that was like, do we take it at the beginning of the zone where I'm thinking of having them in a small group? I think someone mentioned this too, like having them create a WhatsApp or do something like in their smaller groups. Like I think since they're already exchanging information, that could be like a great time for them to fill out like a contact info kind of a thing. So anyway, so that was when I think I had thought we could do that. And then a broader question that I will connect, I think, with DS around is like what that form looks like. Because I don't know that I've seen it, and I know we've talked through maybe like getting like that additional contact, like a family member or somebody that they also put in their contact info, like figuring out what we want to do about that, and wondering if there are other things we want to collect in that contact info that is still around connecting with them or contacting them, but that maybe we haven't thought about in the past.
Maria, so 2 things. Maybe giving fellows an opportunity to update the contact more than one time would be helpful. And then 2, it can take like 30 to 40 minutes.
Such a long form right now.
It is so
way
long,
too long.
Maria. So I don't know if that, it's ridiculous. It's very long. It's not ridiculous. That's not the right word. It's very long. And it can be challenging for fellows to complete in a class period. So just some context.
Okay. And have y'all, sorry, I feel like I should, thanks for putting it in there. I don't know if you guys have we looked at this form recently to like assess
So
the info
I
and
put all the forms in the bottom of your like Y2 Zone 5 lessons and handouts
nice.
thing, and then was like, does someone want to join me on a Y2 form audit, like mini working group, just for the rest of this year of Y2, and then maybe we can like continue that group and do stuff again later. But it's come up a few times, and so I'm happy to help and like figure out some sort of like little mini working group to audit some of these. To make them feasible, but it was kind of like all call, like who wants to join us on this adventure?
To be honest, part of it is long, but part of it is it's very like sometimes fellows feel like it's private. Like, why are you asking me for all these people? Like, I need to ask their permission first before I'm putting all their information here. It feels very intrusive. That's the word. So like making sure the why behind like connecting it to, I think there were some comments in there, like why, the why just needs to be very strong, because it's like, I'm not going to put them, I don't want to put this person's name, I'm not going to give you this information. That was a barrier, some barriers, and I understand.
You're on mute if you're talking.
Hey, sorry. I was saying, taking a look at the form, it also made me wonder, and hearing your sharing out, Lydia, made me think about how can we like preview the form and talk to them about the why, and maybe have them like handwrite it or something so they're getting that information and then filling it out. I wonder if that would help with like the time it takes to do or something. And then yeah, I think we could maybe brainstorm some of that. And then I feel like hopefully they fill it out in GradTrack. Also, it could be collected. Like there's different, you know, we could have multiple ways of getting that info and having it on hand maybe.
I agree. I'm sorry I'm taking up space. And also like connecting it to the champion, like understanding, I put some notes around the definition of what that is. Is that John, who's my homie, who is very, like, has my back, but is not maybe going to school? And I don't know, is this the person that would answer the phone if One Goal calls? Like being thoughtful, thinking, language is important here because they all matter. All your circle matters, but like what do we mean when we mean champion? And like having those people on the contact form, so there's like some continuity in that, and then they may already be prepared to know like who would I put on this form in this context, knowing that my village matters, but in this, you know, yeah.
Yep, that's helpful. And I think like the form right now asks for like parent guardian 1, parent guardian 2. I think maybe we change that and we say like parent guardian, and then they put someone, and then like champion or something that aligns with what we're saying in class, so that they see that alignment there too.
I know something we talked about like when you were still forming it was them like doing something like a sheet where the PD would walk away with like, here's my circle, here's my group of people. And like the second form that Alex shared does ask for a coach or something like that. So as a PD, I think it's helpful to have it both on paper and in GradTrack, but like the paper version might actually be really helpful for PDs to have as they are like calling and checking in with kids.
Yeah, that's a great call out. So what I had been thinking about as I'm thinking about the checklist and like how they're reflecting through the different components of it is having them, to Lydia's point, like be able to delineate like who do I reach out for certain things. Like I might be able to talk to like X person about social belonging or like whatever, but I might not be willing to talk to them about my finances or whatever. And so having like different, helping them think through like who are the different people you contact for different things, and having that be part of the assessment so that hopefully the PD will have a copy of that as well, but the fellows are doing the thinking and writing that down, like including the contact info and that sort of thing. Is how I'm starting to like re-envision what that checklist can look like.
Yeah, and if that's a Google document that they just like add on after each lesson, then as a PD, I can't lose that, and I can like click into that all the time.
Yeah, that is definitely the hope. I still need to like figure out what like the formatting, but I'm thinking of it being like a working document where fellows are adding to it and reflecting on it, and then PDs can hold on to it, and the fellow can go back to it as well. So, yeah.
Cool.
The other thing that I'm thinking through, I've made a number of connections to social media, but one of the things I was thinking through, like, how do we leverage existing technology, given that, like, we don't have our own platform, or that, like, texting being, like, the intrusive type of interventions aren't always available to us, like, as an organization as a whole, and it varies by region, or it varies by, PD engagement and all that. And so one of the things that I thought about was, like, having, through each of the lessons, having fellows, like, take out, like, their Instagram and start following different accounts or things that already do some of this work to leverage what exists. So I put in a couple of things in there, but if you all follow any Instagram or Facebook, groups or whatever that already put out that content that we'd want our fellows to be, to see just automatically come up on their feed, hey, it's time for FAFSA again or whatever it is, please feel free to share it as well, because I think that is something that I'm trying to think about. How do we leverage existing resources and technology in a way that we're not able to provide for our fellows right now? Sorry, I forget I'm on mute. Excuse me. Then I would say the only other big question I had for folks is around, and I know we're talking about this in our collaboration meeting as well, because I saw Rachel put this in there, but any feedback or thoughts around how this is setting you up or helping support PDs as they transition into summer supports? If there's any connections that we need to be making now. I'm sure adding the specific lesson on expectations and norms will help some of that, but if there's anything we can be doing or thinking about now to help set that up for summer supports would be helpful as well.
The one thing I'm thinking about is, so I do see the 2 lessons on supporting fellows and navigating last minute financial challenges, but I'm wondering how deeper we can go there. A lot of their challenges are around inability to afford a housing deposit or needing to purchase last minute books. And so I'm wondering to what degree we could provide more resources there. Talk a little bit about One Goal's emergency fund and what that looks like in their respective region, or even zoning a little bit more on point of contacts, as someone else mentioned. But I know those are also very nuanced challenges. So I don't know how we can solve for that in the curriculum.
I would add on one other challenge I'd love to see highlighted is the panic challenge. So I'm panicked or I have a ton of anxiety, and a lot of times my kids wouldn't pick up the phone. And so calling that out, or would feel ashamed. And so calling out the shame aspect and how to overcome that, maybe even doing some role plays around that could be really helpful.
Yeah, Val, that made me think of, I was just in a Y2 cohort where the PD has created sort of a script for the fellows to use to follow up on their application materials to schools and enrollment pathways. And I think that's a really cool and valuable step in zone 2 and 3, but I think now too, just do I have everything that I need, but is there a script or a way to remove some of the anxiety around advocacy with structure? It seemed to really help the fellows in that cohort to I have the script, I'm introducing myself, I'm this is information I'm going to share, I'm going to ask this person's name so I can contact them back, and here's the questions that I need to check on. So whether it's role plays to practice and they can generate it themselves, or there's a script of supporting advocacy to follow up with institutions.
Also thinking in terms of the transition to summer supports, something living in the curriculum to maybe remind PDs to remind fellows that Y2 ends September 1st, in that zone, because I think sometimes it's oh yeah, we're still doing this, even though they're going through it. It's just still very and then the enrollment checklists, they are very college centric. So what are the maybe it's just generic, if you're interested in a certification or trade, what are some research steps? What is the first thing you can do? Our friend Google, or so it's not, it's helping PDs understand that it's not all me having to research all of these 27 options, but fellows can do some of this too, and they can have a checklist to go through. There are 26 trades in Chicago. These are the, these are some links. Or if that's too much, just like I said, some generic research checklist for them to start, like, this is what I need to do. Yeah, it's tough, but yeah, something.
Yeah, I think that there is like a generic way to sort of say, like, assuming they've applied, like they've already applied, right? And now they're trying to like, what do I need to do to enroll? Like, go to that website, look for these things, you know, that sort of like a step-by-step, like, to get them to figure out what is it that they might need to do or how that might apply to them could be like one way to set that up for sure.
I think that another thing on the summer support side, and I know this is different for each region, so maybe this is more a regionalization thing than a national thing, but like how to normalize not just PD relationship, but like one goal relationship. Like, I don't know, is there like a way that they're like, go on to the website and look at the pictures of one goal staff members in your region, or like, I don't know, like know that like maybe as call it out for us as regions, like to add in our own, like to what extent will we be reaching out to fellows or how to normalize that. Like I'm thinking about maybe like making a video of all of our Y2 staff members to introduce them to fellows, and I don't know, just like what can we do to get not just the PD to fellow piece, but if one goal is going to directly support students, how to normalize that.
Yeah, and I would encourage adding like Y3 staff in that as well. I know Massachusetts did something similar to that last year.
Thanks, L'Oreal.
Yeah, I think we called them like the Y3 roadshows, but and there was a lot of learnings. We actually like did a pretty delayed after action review on what worked and what didn't about those roadshows as part of like a bigger conversation about what worked and what didn't about a transition from a Y2 to a Y3 experience as PDs and for fellows. But I think I don't know, like reading an after action review from another team is not a great way to learn, but I'm trying to think of like what the best way would be to like capture what did work about those roadshows. Maybe just a call with Marisa or Yanli or both to just see like what that experience was. And actually I would say like, and Ainsley, to just hear like on both ends what that experience was like and what they would say are like the highest level takeaways.
So preview, but one of the topics I have on our collab meeting is for us to think through a little bit about learning labs for the spring and like what that might look like. And what we're hoping to do is to do like a preview of spring for Y1 and Y2 in December, and then have the learning labs connect to like what's happening in the classrooms during that time. And I wonder if that could be like one of the learning labs where we have that conversation as either a breakout room or whatever for folks to start thinking through what that might look like in the coming months regionally.
Yeah, I think that could be cool, and like with a really strong emphasis on learning, because I think some of the things we did worked really well and are like, it's like take this and use it. And I think some things did not work well, and my team would be very like reflective and actually naming that, and it would be a great chance to be like, don't make this same mistake. So like having it almost be like a case study of like, here's how we tried it, here's what our goals were, here's what about it worked, here's what about it didn't work, and like I think that could be really cool, and definitely something that members of the team would be up for.
Can I just say in March potentially, hopefully, unless the date changes, Y2, hopefully there'll be a Y2, Y3 like best practice session around like post-secondary supports. L'Oreal, we're gonna have, hopefully, where y'all will be leading it and doing that. So that's what, like, we just talked about it yesterday. So hopefully that's something that folks would be interested in leading in.
Anything else that we should highlight or talk through?
This is really small and we don't have to talk through it, but I love the takeaways from this, like what kids will walk away with. But I added some thoughts around like, they've already done it. They've already like been through process. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can we incorporate, like you can, you know, this is just another phase and like going from middle school to high school or ninth grade to your senior year, like you can do it. And that's why I like your can language because, you know, they've already done it. So yeah.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, yeah, so true. Like just have it, like making sure that they understand this isn't, it's going to be a new experience, but they've already have experience being able to do it that like they can pull on, they can pull from, right?
This is sitting, so something that's sitting with me is like how do we support these young adults and really realizing that this is the closure of one chapter and that they're about to be whole adults. And it's not coming out for me. I don't know how to address or acknowledge that because it's genuinely a paradigm shift that they're going to inherit so much responsibility. Yes, they are whole adults. And maybe it's like in addition to what Lydia already named, but yeah, that's sitting with me. And I don't know if, like, I like the thing that you're adding, Maria, around like encouraging them to follow certain social media pages. It's really making me a little frustrated that we don't share a lot of resources as an org through social media. But I just wonder how we can address and acknowledge that that is a huge shift that a lot of them are about to experience.
Okay, I was making a joke with the cohort bat mitzvah, but I wonder, there are a lot of cultures that have a like coming of age tradition or like cultural like occurrence or like notable passage, I don't know what the word is, from like into adulthood or like through different phases of life, even if it's not like the childhood to adulthood part. I wonder if like that could be like a one of the mini lessons or just like something to get at L'Oreal's point and like honor where they've come and like that they can do this and like tying L'Oreal and Lydia's ideas together. Oh, Stoles. Good point, Sarah. Stoles. I forgot about Stoles.
I mean, it depends on what you do around them. The thing in itself is like nothing, but I think I've seen some teachers do really meaningful like stole ceremonies where it's like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, fellows are reading reflections on what they've learned, on talking about why they feel like they are prepared for the next step, like how they plan to lean on their cohort, you know, like, so it is like a coming of age sort of thing, but around the stoles, because it's kind of like, yeah. So it could be something that we intentionally build something around. I think the other thing that to me is a bit of a challenge, L'Oreal, is like, you could have just said something that I feel about almost like any lesson throughout all of this is like, how do we really prepare them? And I actually think part of it is like, they just have to do it. You know, like that's part of the part that's the toughest. Like how many times can we say, you're about to be whole adults, you're about to, and then it's like, and like, you just have to feel what it feels like to get a syllabus and know that your first assignment is until December and like no one's grading worksheet, like, you know, or that transportation costs are not covered and you hadn't thought through that. Like no matter how many things we do to try to prepare them, whether it's writing it in the curriculum, whether it's putting it in coaching guides, there is this other layer of like,
Yeah, I you know, as a DTS, I thought about this a lot, and saying it's not gonna cut it. Like you can say that a million times, like I am grown, whatever, you know, I'm grown. But like, I started thinking about things that you could do potentially tied to like Y3, like the PD can start sending emails randomly. You have to respond. There's like credit for that, or there's incentive for that. Or going, I know there's a thin line, but what you can ask a student to do or not, but like creating an opportunity or experience that may feel like a little outside the box, but you're going to do it. Like, you're going to actually call the bursar's office. I mean, and that's already kind of integrated in there. Or you're going to go to a movie by yourself, or you're going to go, like, I don't know, but like thinking about like, maybe there's just a few experiences that give you the feeling of like, I'm doing this. So I don't really like have a list, but I feel like, you know, potentially I could sit down and brainstorm some things that like you could start doing now, you know, to help get at that, Sarah and L'Oreal. And I should probably be doing some of those things myself.
I set an
I like
alarm
that
for
idea too.
set an alarm for every 2 hours for the
Even
next couple
alarms.
nights.
Yeah, that, exactly. But no, setting alarms. Some young people don't set alarms. Time is just so, you know what I'm saying? Like, even that is an idea that you could do, is that, and that's fun for, like, they just, you know, I don't know. Looking at a bus schedule and not just
I was about
arriving.
to say,
yeah.
I was about to say something where like having them plan a trip somewhere, or like if they're going to a campus in their city, like having them do that bus route, or like even look it up and see like, oh, okay, how long will this take me? What time would I actually, or something, I don't know. Anyways, I need to figure out like how to fit that stuff in, but I do like the idea of like, what are some of those experiences that maybe we could include, whether it's homework or something that they're trying to do on their own. And yeah. Cool. So we have a minute left.
Some shit like that. I'm sorry. That's huge.
That is big. Okay, cool.
The only thing I would say is that I know the video of our like alumni is old, but I love it. I rewatched it today and I was just like, I just love them so much. One of them is also mine. I'm biased, and the rest are the ones I was a DTS for, so I'm really, really biased. But I really like the incorporation of like some of the work we've done, and I know Chicago team, I think the innovation team has a few other videos too that we could maybe lean on. But yeah, I really liked that part.
Yeah, I do too. And one of the, like a lot of the research that we're hearing is like hearing directly from peers is like really important, right? So if we can incorporate that, and then maybe there's like a larger conversation to be had of how do we help support Legions creating like more videos like that, and so that it's not just Chicago being featured, or like we're able to put some sort of video montage or something around that. Right, folks, we are at time. Thank you so much for all your input. Zadra and I are going to connect next week and make all of this fit in and be even better than it was before. And we'll loop you in for send out those calendar invites for January to get you to look at the actual lessons once we have them. So, thanks, team.
Thanks for the revised approach. That was fun to look at the like skeletons. It was cool.
Thanks. Hey, team, we're just saying bye now that we're joining back into the whole group.
Did you not need to do the poll?
I mean, I could do the poll, but I feel
But
like...
now a lot of people are gone.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, friends. Happy holidays.
Bye.